muted, huh? Hello, 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 hello. How are you doing, Fearless Freedom Tribe? I am absolutely fired up today. And we are waiting just a few minutes because Dr. Vash is a bit behind, but she'll be here shortly. But in the meantime, I just wanted to just say thank you to you because, you know, this has been a big week. This has been a huge week for the Fearless Freedom podcast because this week, matter of fact, yesterday, so if you're watching this live and if you're listening to the recording, this is being recorded on December 4th, 2020. And so yesterday, December 3rd, 2018 was the day when the Fearless Freedom with Dr. G podcast was established, born, whatever you want to call it. And so it has been 2 years. Can you believe that? I am still literally like pinching myself because it has been an amazing journey. It has been a journey that was, or is, I should say, beyond anything I could have ever imagined when I made a decision a couple years ago to say, okay, I have a fear of public speaking. This thing is crippling me. This is something that I need to figure a way to get better at, to get over. And what better way to do that than to have people who are also facing fears come on a show with me and join the journey with me. And then hopefully have a whole bunch of people listen to the show and learn about how they can face their fears and emerge victoriously as well. So that's how the show got started, and it has been an amazing ride. We have had some incredible guests on the show. You have heard my story over the years and how things have been going with getting on more stages and facing my personal fear of public speaking. And you also learned about tactics, ways in which you can face your fear and emerge victoriously. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about being greater than we were yesterday. And how do we get there? We step outside of our comfort zone. And the comfort zone that we love and cherish and we want to always be in is usually this place that we feel the most safe. So that means we're not facing our fears. Of course, I am not talking about fears that are going to be causing you physical harm if you face them. I am talking about the fears that are going to stop you from starting the business you always wanted to start, or asking for the promotion that you always wanted, or, doing that adventurous thing with your family you've always wanted to do. These are the things that I'm talking about. These are the things that are going to help us as individuals to stretch ourselves and to become greater than we were yesterday. The more we face fear and the more we do the things that are a little bit scary, is the greater we will be able to develop ourselves and essentially become more and more fearless and become more and more incredible. Because yes, you are incredible already. Yes, you are awesome already. But just imagine what your life would be like when you can look back, say 2 years, say a year, and you can look back at that you and really say with all honesty, oh my gosh, I am like 10x that person. I am so much more than I ever imagined. Why? Because I decided to face my fear. So boom, there it is. So I encourage you, if you're new to the podcast, I thank you for popping on, and I welcome you to take a listen to some of the previous episodes. And I hope that you will choose something that you are fearful of and choose something that you can make a difference with. Come up with a plan, because you can do it. You can do it. And I see Dr. Vasha is in the studio, so I am going to bring her on. Okay, welcome.
Hi there, Charmaine. How are you?
Oh, good to see you. Good to see you. I was just talking about, the history of the show because we just celebrated 2-year anniversary. So you are,
congratulations.
thank you. And this is episode 102. So
Wow.
Thank you for taking time out and coming and talking to the tribe because, we appreciate you. There you go.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate you. And congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome.
So we are super excited to hear from you because you are in a very important space. You are, well, you know what? I'm going to let you talk about what you do because, I feel like, true awesomeness comes from the source and it's much better when it comes from the source. So I'm going to let you talk about who you are and what you actually do to make this world amazing.
Oh gosh, thank you, Charmaine, and thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm so excited to be here. And first of all, I just want to thank you because I know you and I have been connected on social media probably for a couple of years now, and I just want to say you're such a light. You always share so much positive energy and enthusiasm, and I know there have been times when it's personally been really helpful to me to just have that dose of, encouragement and keep going, Awesome. So I think you're in Michigan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So all the way in California, you've had quite an impact on me. So thank you. Let's see a little bit about me. I'm Monisha. I'm a psychiatrist. I practice general and addiction psychiatry. Let's see, I'm in private practice and I'm based in Orange County, California, although I'm originally from Chicago, so also from the Midwest, and feel your pain with the cold that you guys are probably experiencing right now.
Oh yeah, it's definitely cold.
Oh my gosh, I know. And so, I do a couple of different things. I see patients in my practice. I also have a special interest in physician wellness. So I work with UC Irvine, which is one of our, institutions here in Southern California, and I provide mental health support to the family medicine residency, as well as the pediatrics residents and fellows. And I also provide mental health support to the doctors at City of Hope, which is a cancer hospital here in Southern California. And so that's a big part of my work. It's kind of a personal and professional passion that I feel very much it's a privilege to be able to do that work. And then outside of that, I love to write poetry in particular, which is a relatively new interest for me. I recently stepped into the world of podcasting, kind of inspired by you, Charmaine. So I'm just getting my feet wet with that. But we launched the More Happiness, Less Suffering podcast, which is
awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, bringing together mental health and mindfulness, and then also working on a digital course that is focused on burnout prevention and resilience, kind of that has come from my work with physicians over the years, and really trying to put that into a format that maybe is more widely accessible. So. And then I'm a mom and have 2 kids. I have a daughter who's 14 and a son who's almost 13. And I don't know how you do it. I know you homeschool your kids. I don't know how you even manage that, but between doing that and working the night shift and all the other things you do, it's pretty amazing. And I like to run. I'm a long distance runner. So those are kind of my main things outside of my work world. So I guess that kind of sums it up.
Awesome. That was a lot. Are you kidding? You're like, I don't know how you do all these things, but I'm a writer. I create courses. I do incredible work with residents and doctors and and I have a practice and I have children and so you're hilarious because you're like, oh my God, how do you do it? I wonder, how do you do it?
I think it's like such a funny thing because it's like, sometimes, you probably get asked this a lot too about work-life balance. And I'm like, I don't think there's any such thing, honestly, as work-life balance. I think like different things take center stage at different times. And, there are times when, certain things become more of a priority and other things, are less so, and it just kind of shifts that way. And but I think that the goal overall, of course, I think for all of us is the more that we can keep doing the things that we love to do, the less it actually feels like work, you know?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting that you brought that up because last night had the privilege and honor to be able to speak with some future physicians who happen to be female. So the local AMWA. So if people don't know what AMWA is, it's American Medical Women's Association.
So cool.
And so I was like, wow, they actually, I mean, they reached out to me on Instagram, which I think is fantastic. Like, I love that social media can be used in a positive way like that. And so, you know, so we were talking, and it was myself and Dr. Faz. She's a dermatologist. She's earlier in her career than I am. So if the people who don't know where I am right now, I am 15 years into my career. So I guess people would say I'm past mid-career. I don't know how you'd really put that, but so that's kind of where I am. And then, you know, she was she's basically just finishing a couple years now of residency. And so, but it was cool because, you know, we had these amazing women who were medical students now, and you know, they had such really poignant questions, you know, in regard to what is it like to be a woman in medicine. You know, do you let the fact that you are female determine what you decide to go into as a specialty? Like, you know, all the things, like, you know, what were the things that kind of weighed into your decision? And then the work-life balance came into play because, you know, they were like, well, how do we manage this as medical students? How do we, you know, if we have families, like, how do we do this? And it turned out that Dr. Fahaz actually had one of her children, or actually had two of her children during her training. And so, you know, she talked about how that helped her to focus. And, you know, it just, you know, different, like you said, it's really work-life balance. It's like almost like a fallacy because you hit it the nail on the head when you said that there are just things that you take, you know, you put higher than at times over other times. So there may be a time, perhaps when you're like certifying or you're, you know, for your, whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're in medicine, perhaps when you're doing your boards or you're doing your, you know, your steps or something, you're going to be more focused on the work aspect. Or, you know, if you're going towards a particular goal, you may be more focused on that and less focused on some of the other things. But then, you know, there are other times when your family or your life demands more of your attention and your time. And so then you're not focused on those things, right? So it's never the balance. It's not like this 50-50 or this, you know, 0.33, 0.33, 0.33. You know, it's like, it's not like that. It's really like it's more of a give and take with priorities, right? And then making sure that you don't forget to prioritize this person, right? Right? And then the people who are closest to you and mean the most to you, like prioritize that first, and then everything else is kind of gravy, right? Because you don't want to be the one who is literally, you know, sitting on the rocking chair or whatever it is on the porch, and you're by yourself because you had no friends, you had no family, you had nobody who was going to be there with you at your time of need, because you spent all of your time focused on your work, for example, and giving everything to that. Like that doesn't make you a happy person. Like that doesn't make you a good person. Well, I don't know. That's debatable. But I mean, it doesn't really like give you fulfillment then. True fulfillment. At least in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point. I mean, I think essentially, you know, what you're talking about, it, you know, is so like just being really clear on your values and your priorities, and those may look different for every person, you know, but I think the more that we can align our choices and how we spend our time with our core values, the happier in general we're going to feel. I think our ability to do that, especially in medicine, of course, changes with time. Like, you know, when you're a med student or when you're a resident, you may have a little bit less control, obviously, over your choices and your schedule than you do, you know, many years into your practice, for example. So our ability to have that agency does change a little bit over time. But I think in general, even in small ways, we can always try to make the types of choices that align with what's personally most important to us. And I think when I look back and I think about the times that I've struggled the most or been unhappy or feel like something just doesn't feel right, it's when, the way that I'm spending my time and the choices that I'm making fundamentally are not aligned with what inside is most important to me. And so I think, that is one of the ways in which, I think we can look at this work-life balance issue is, by and large, can you try to make the choices of how you spend your time, how you spend your energy, um, in a way that's perhaps most aligned with what means the most to you. And again, we can't always do that. Obviously, when you're working in some settings or another, there's differences, but I think the more that we can do that, usually the more aligned we tend to feel.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And then
Mhm.
the other thing is you do a lot of work with resilience, correct?
Mhm.
You
Yes,
know,
that's right.
can you speak to that? Like, can you speak to how the impact of that, or how you see fear manifested in your work?
Mm,
Like,
mm,
how are our colleagues and students, residents, how are they doing in that regard? Like, how are you
mm.
helping them?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the reason that this concept of resilience really resonates with me is because, one of the things that I think we learn in medicine and also just in life, like with time, also this year has been such a good example with, all the challenges that we face this year. I mean, it's been rough for everybody. And I think we really realize that a lot of the times the stress that we deal with in life is kind of out of our control, like there are a few stressors that we can control, but a lot of the things that happen are kind of out of our control. And I think when I look back in the beginning, I think I was trying to approach life by trying to like get rid of the stress. Like that was my that was my plan. I was like, okay, if I can just get rid of all the stress, then I'm going to feel really good. And you quickly realize it's like that game where you like hit one and the other one like
Whack a
pops up.
mole.
I
That's
forget the
whack a
name.
mole.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like there's always going to be something, and so I think the concept of resilience really says, okay, stress is going to be present. How do we rebound from that stress, or how do we bounce back from that stress? And what sort of skills can we develop? What choices can we make? What perspectives can we adopt that helps us to bounce back? And usually the metaphor that I think of is like a ball that's sort of compressed, by something, and how the ball bounces back to its original shape. That's what I think of when I think of resilience. So it's like you stop focusing so much on trying to just get rid of the stress, and you really focus on how can I actually um, work on what I do have control over, which is, my perspective, my choices, um, and use that as a way to cultivate my own internal resilience, no matter what comes my way, and so I think it's a more sustainable way to move forward than trying to just get rid of all the stress altogether. And of course there are exceptions to that if you're in like an abusive relationship or something like that where
Right.
yeah, like you need to sort of address the stressor in that case, right? But so many things that we navigate on a day-to-day basis just come at us and really are not in our control. So many of you might have heard the serenity prayer, like how do I look at what I have control over, don't have control over, and, cultivate the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's a big part of cultivating our inner resilience.
Awesome. And then, so do
Uh,
you feel like, and that's a great analogy, because I mean, I'm
uh,
visualizing the ball being compressed and
mm,
then being let go
yeah,
and then bouncing back up. And
yeah,
so, have you seen where, so we talk about stress being a factor. Have you seen where
yeah.
fear has been a factor? Have you noticed that?
Mm.
Or
Yeah, I think fear comes in, to play, I think, in a couple of different levels. But I think a lot of times, we're really fearful, I think, sometimes to make the changes that we know on some level we need to make, when we look at, okay, like what's working in my life, what's not working in my life, like, where do I have some agency to make some change? And anytime we look at making any kind of change, whether it's a positive change or quote unquote negative change, anytime we're approaching a change or a transition or some kind of major life shift, it usually elicits some sense of fear because we're stepping into the unknown, and oftentimes our current situations, even though they may not be working for us, they might be comfortable, so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
kind of stay in them because we're like, oh, we know this, it's familiar, and so I know when I talk to my patients about making some of these changes, a lot of times what we're talking about is, okay, you're experiencing some fear in regards to making this life change. Can we be afraid and make the change anyway?
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I think we often feel like, okay, once I just get over the fear, then I'll do it. And I often say, I think it's kind of the other way around. Like, I think you just have to do it, and then the fear will get better with time. It's kind of like confidence or anything like that. Like, if we wait for the feeling to come, we're going to be waiting a really long time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so sometimes we just have to kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. And I know you talk a lot about that, you know, when we do that, then we start to develop that confidence of like, okay, I can do it. I'm showing myself that I can do it.
Absolutely. No, that's huge. That is
Mm.
huge. Yeah, because what made me think about it was, I remember when I was going through burnout, there was a lot of fear there. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like what is happening right now?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you're able to, through the resilience work, if you're able to really, pinpoint on not only the stressors but also the fears, I think
Yeah.
that really helps, because then you
Yeah.
get even more of a breakthrough, and you
Yeah.
maybe save some people from going through burnout, which is the ultimate goal, I'm sure.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
no, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. That is
I think
fascinating.
I think burnout in particular, there's a lot of fear, because when we look at, physicians in particular, it's this incredibly resilient group of people, actually. You take this like committed, compassionate, resilient, hardworking group of people and you put them through so much, really in many ways, these inhumane conditions and training situations and all the trauma that goes along with that, all the exhaustion that goes along with that, and then you end up in this state of feeling burnt out, and then there's that fear of like, gosh, this thing that I spent all this energy and time, and for many of us we've devoted our lives to this one goal of becoming a doctor. What if I can't actually do it now that I'm here? Like, I've made my way through my training, I'm like starting to sort of get out into the world, and I'm feeling exhausted, depleted, overwhelmed, I'm not taking any satisfaction in my work, and it's like, there's a lot of fear about some of the thoughts and emotions that come up with that. Like, am I not cut out for this? What if I can't do it? I'm not trained to do anything else. I don't know what
Oh
else
yeah.
I would how am I going to pay all these loans?
Right.
It's like there's a lot of fear that comes with
Oh yeah.
burnout. And I think part of the goal in working with, people who are at that stage is to get them to see that, uh, some of those fears are associated with the lens being cloudy. It's like you're in a state of burnout, so you're not seeing yourself and your circumstances necessarily through a clear lens. And if we can get you just, through the period of burnout, then your ability to see your future and your role and who you are will kind of clear up again. But when you're in the middle of it, it's very, very hard to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No,
Mm.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. I was talking to this one a pediatrics resident who was on his pediatric ICU rotation, and
Yeah.
he was saying that he had completed his requirements for the ICU, part of what he needed to do to get through his residency, but this was sort of additional ICU time that he was being
Okay.
asked to do, and he had this thought that he's like, if I just like threw this phone as far as I could, through this pager as far as I could, he's like, what would really happen? Like there's other attendings there, there's fellows there. Like, would anything really terrible happen if I just threw this phone as far as I could and just took off, And like, I think those are the types of thoughts that we're like, we never thought we would think this way in medicine. Like, we were here to show up and take care of our patients. But when you get to that point of exhaustion and burnout, these are the types of thoughts that arise and sometimes make you feel like I don't even know myself anymore.
Oh, for certain.
Yes. You're like, I've been there.
You're
I know.
like,
We've all been there.
it's
Yes, I
crazy.
know. I
But yeah,
know.
it's
I
like
know.
that is a really vivid example though. The holding the phone. I mean, I guess back in our day it might have been the beeper, but they have a phone now. And so it's like, if I just take this phone and just like chuck it in the garbage or just throw it in the window, what would happen?
What
What
would
would really
happen?
happen?
Would anyone notice? Like, would it really be that bad? Yeah. I know.
Oh my
I
God.
know.
Yeah, no,
I
yeah, that's
know.
quite the metaphor, but it's
Yeah.
really, really like it's pivoting.
Yeah.
It's very very vivid. Yes.
Yes, yeah, because it's such an example of like where we get to in these dark places that's so far from where we started, and it's like I think part of my role in those situations is also just to remind, especially these residents, that this time is time limited. It's
Yes.
not going to be this way forever. This will get better with time, and just helping to maintain that perspective. But I think the fear piece comes in when you don't recognize yourself anymore and you're like, oh my gosh, like I
Who is
didn't,
this person?
yeah, who is this person? I would never think this, and so
Oh.
yeah, but that's what burnout can do to you.
Yeah, no, again, thank you for the work because let me tell you, it's needed and,
Mm,
and needed particularly when people don't even realize it, right? Because I mean, it's
yeah,
like, I'm sure he didn't think that he was going to be in that position, having those kinds
yeah.
of thoughts so no, it's definitely needed. So thank you. Thank you, thank you,
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. And thank you for all you do with burnout and sharing your own story and how you made your way through it. Because, like, I think sometimes that's the most powerful thing, right? Is when you hear the narratives of people who have gone through it and come out the other end. And you're like, okay, like, they're talking about their experience. There's no need to feel shame or stigma around this very normal thing that we all go through. And somebody else sharing their narrative helps people who are not quite so far along in the process to know, like, okay, she got through it, like I can get through it too.
Yes, yes. No, and that's the hope, right? Or as we tell what happens to us, our hope is that someone will hear it and it will
Yeah.
resonate with them, and then they won't end up in the same situation, that I ended up in and other people have ended
Yeah.
up in, because it's something that is truly. I mean, people might be thinking, "Oh man, we didn't hear anything about this burnout thing for a while," and then even though it's been around for many 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 decades, and
Yeah.
has been written about in the literature, just not as public with it, because of what you just mentioned, the whole stigma behind, you're tough enough to make it through a
Yes.
residency, what is wrong with you, you should never burn out, like you should never be weak, that's a sign of weakness, like
Yeah. Yeah.
these are all fallacies, right? I mean, because
Yes.
it's clear that burnout itself is ubiquitous. It's not just germane to medicine. It is
Yeah.
in pharmacy. It is in real estate. It is in motherhood. It is everywhere.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, it's like accepting the fact that, we are human and that this is something that does happen. And then realizing, okay, recognize that I have the issue or I'm getting towards that issue, and then coming up with a plan to
Yes.
basically get yourself out of that. Right. I mean, that's really what it's about.
Absolutely.
So if
Yes.
me telling my
Absolutely.
story is gonna raise some awareness and have someone realize that, oh my goodness, they're in that spot and they need to figure a way out, then that's all I can ask. Because
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you bring up some great points because I think the shame gets perpetuated the less we talk about something, right? And then the more alone we feel with our experience, the more alone like your neighbor feels with their experience, even though you might be going through the exact same thing. And really the only way to do it is to start actually just talking about these things that we feel like we weren't supposed to talk about or we couldn't talk about. And like social media and platforms like this, like podcasts, I think are so powerful in that regard because, you know, you can just get the message out on a much broader scale. Obviously, as a psychiatrist, the work we do is important, but it's very one-on-one, right? It's like one person working with another one person. Whereas I think some of these platforms help us to reach a much wider audience, which I think is important when it comes to topics like this that so many people are struggling with. But also you bring up the point, you said it's ubiquitous, like just, that tells you that it's not about you as a person when everybody's going through it. It's not personal anymore, and it's, especially in medicine, it helps us to recognize there are institutional factors that need to change, training systems that need to change, cultural things that need to change. When you see that everybody's experiencing this, it's the system that needs to change. But at the same time, we still need to support individuals as they go through it,
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad you brought up motherhood too, because I feel like that's another one where we do burn out, and it is something, that we don't talk about because we feel like, oh my gosh, I should love being a mom like all the time. It's like it doesn't always feel like that, but we just feel like yeah. I know we don't feel like we can talk about it, and yet it's like it's such a real part of what so many of us experience that it's like, these are moments that get really exhausting, and it's not fun all the time, and it is hard work, and so I think, just recognizing even as a mom that burnout can happen and that it happens to many of us. I think we don't talk about it enough, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. And then I'm just imagining, because, so our cherubs are 8, 10, and 12. Almost at 13.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
He would love
amazing.
He's like, oh my God, I'm a teenager.
He's ready. He's ready.
Yeah, he's so ready. He's so ready. I'm like, dude, you need to wait. So for real, for my sake, particularly.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned that you have 2 teenagers.
Yeah, so my daughter's 14 and my son is almost 13, so they're 17 months apart. Yeah, so
Wow.
they're very close in age, actually. But yours are 2 years.
When you're listening, I know you can't see the video, but like right now, I am like bowing down.
Oh my gosh. But it's not like I feel that way because you have 3 like that are 2 years apart. I mean, I don't, I just honestly, I can't imagine, like I feel so at my limit with 2 that I'm like, wow, I don't know how you do it, but I think it's hard no matter what. I think even if you have an only child, it's hard. If you're trying to get pregnant and have kids, it's hard. If you have too many kids, it's hard. It's like every situation you're dealing with some challenges, that are specific to you. But and I think the challenges change like at different, like when they were young, like I had one as a chief resident and one as a fellow. And actually looking back, I'm really grateful that I had them during that time because I had the support of my training program and
Awesome.
My program directors, who are all male, and my residents and my co-fellow actually were all male and very, very supportive. And so I'm grateful for that, but the challenges that come when they're like, babies and toddlers versus now as tweens and teens, it's different. But still like the nature of the labor is different. Like now it's more emotional and like trying to hold space in a different type of way. And it's much more like physically exhausting when they're younger, I think,
Oh yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, but you homeschool all 3? All 3 of yours are homeschooled?
Yes, they are. But remember that this is not a me effort, right? This is a team effort. So, my husband does a lot of it. And then, we have the assistance of my mom who, helps us out with some of the things. So it's not me doing it, which I think it would be impossible. There's just no way everything could get done if it was just me doing it. But and then of course, over the years they have really become very independent learners. And so they kind of had to, because my husband also works. So it's like, you know, we had two working parents who were homeschooling. And so they learned early to become independent learners. And so it's still, I mean, it's still intense. It's just not as, like minute to minute hands on.
Yes.
Like it could be, or used to be, I should say.
Yeah. So, but just like an operational question, just because I'm curious, like, how do you, because I know you're a nocturnist, you do like night shifts. So how do you, like, because then you have to sleep during the day. So when do you, like, how do you work with them in terms of like just the day-to-day stuff that they need when they're at home, when you also have been working all night? Like, how do you balance that?
So that's where the team comes into play. So for example, when my husband's at work and then I'm sleeping, my mom is here to, you know, make sure they're okay and anything they need. And then when I wake up, you know, then I do what I need to do in regard to the schooling and family. And then, you know, when they, you know, then of course, when it's time for me to go back to sleep, to get ready to go to work, you know, but I try to cluster my shifts anyway. So what I would do is when I was working full-time, not working full-time currently, but when I was working full-time, I would cluster my shifts. So I would do like six in a row, have a few weeks off, and then 6 more, you know, that would be how I would do it. So it would be like a flow. And then we would flip, and then we would do another flow. So I do that even now as a part-time physician, because I still cluster my shifts, even though I'm not doing the full load. I'm still clustering in 2 batches each month, so that there's a lot of time to work around with everything else that's going on.
Got it. Yeah. So you've just had to be really conscious of how you organize, you know, your team, as you said, and then also you're strategic and how you plan your schedule out in a way that kind of that they can all work together in that regard.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
So it just goes back to that whole thing that we were just talking about earlier with the balance, right? Because it's like, there are things that we have to focus on at certain times. So obviously, if we're getting close to the end of the semester, or we need to get some things in place, then obviously we're going to focus more intensely on the schoolwork. And whereas it might be not that we are not doing it all along, but we're like a little bit more like lax with it, you know? And they get to do, like, they have a lot more freedom, and, you know, they're like, you know, they're learning as they're going, but we try not to make it stressful for them. And it has worked out really well so far. So.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you give that, you know, speaking of freedom, like, I love that you give them a little bit of freedom really to learn in the ways that work best for them and where they can maintain their enthusiasm and interest in learning without getting too stressed. You know, it's like, it's really hard for kids these days. Like, I think between academic pressure and social pressure and social media and, you know, all the extracurricular activities, and it's really quite intense for some of them. Yes. And intense for the parents too, who are trying to help them navigate those schedules and those stressors. And so I like that it sounds like you're really intentional about just making choices that you feel is best for them as well as for your family.
We try. We haven't broken them yet. It's been 9 years, so hopefully we won't break them.
You're like, they're still like in one piece, reasonably speaking.
Still reasonably happy, and they haven't decided they want to, like, you know, jump ship from already here from us. So, you know, I think it's working out okay.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So did you know, like, when you like think back for like to med school, for example, like, did you know that you wanted to sort of work nights and kind of, you know, structure your family in this way with, like, was it kind of very intentional right from the start, or did it kind of just evolve?
Yes. So it's interesting because I had no idea. Like, I mean, I knew what the specialty entailed because, you know, obviously I did the rotations and, like, I shadowed the appropriate individuals, et cetera, but I never, like, envisioned myself working nights. I mean, I did night shifts, obviously, during residency, because we would do, you know, how we had our thing structured was literally we'd do 12-hour shifts. So it's either you were working a string of days or you're working a string of nights. And so it was like, you just go in at 7, is whether it's 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. Doesn't matter. And so, I never really said, oh, the nights are for me. But when I got out, and this is even before family, we were married. We had just gotten married, but I was doing the undulating shifts, like the morning and an afternoon and then this weird, swing thing. And I just said to myself, I can't do this. I can't do this. I thought I could do this, but I can't do it. And so I looked around and I was like, wait, there's some people, because my group has always had a cadre of nocturnists that basically man the night shifts, right? And so I looked at that and I was like, I think I might want to try nights. You get to make your own schedule. Oh, I like that. And you don't have to be all over the place. Oh, I like that too. And so I decided to do it, and then I loved it. And I was just like, oh, now I've done it for 14 years. So it's kind of crazy.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah, it just goes to show that, different people have different, preferences, and what works for, like, that works really well for you. And you wouldn't have even known that, but it works, It's awesome.
Yeah. It was kind of serendipitous, but I'm very grateful that it happened that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Cause I hear that and I'm like, I don't think I could do that. I'm used to sleeping at night, but then, people might hear about what we do as psychiatrists and think, oh, I don't know that that's really for me. And I think that's the beauty, is that there's kind of something for all of us, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I love about the fact that there are specialties because of that, right?
Yes.
I know for sure that I couldn't do what you do. Like, I know that for certain.
Yeah, and vice versa. You would not want me as your ER doctor, trust me.
So it's all good. We're in our lanes. We're in our spaces. So it's fantastic.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. This has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us. We appreciate you for sure. And we have to, every time we have a conversation on this show, we have a tradition. Okay. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready, but
are you ready? Okay. Right.
I'm listening though. Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure. And so first,
it sounds like it doesn't matter if I'm ready though.
Oh, not really, because you're gonna have to go through it. It's just the price you pay. It's a toll. It's a toll, the passage. All right. So the first one is, if I am fearless, I will.
So if I am fearless, I will make choices without regard for other people's approval.
Love it. Love that.
That's what I'd say. That's a hard one for me because, I think just temperament and culturally, like, others' approval was, important to me along the way and growing up, and a factor in how I made choices. But I'm realizing that you can't really be both. I don't think you can be fearless and at the same time worry about what other people think of you. I kind of think they're mutually exclusive.
Oh yeah. I'm with you on that one. All right, cool. That was awesome. All right. Ready for the next one?
Sure.
Okay. To me, fearless freedom means.
I think it means being able to live a life that I love, doing what I love with the people that I love. To me, I think that's really maybe the definition and the goal of fearless freedom when I think about it.
Sweet. And then I am dying to hear what this one is, but my battle cry is.
My battle cry. Well, can I have two?
Of course.
All right. I have two, because one is more of a personal one, and then one is more of like my psychiatry battle cry, I would say. But my personal one is, I would say, no growth happens within my comfort zone. That's something I have to remind myself of a lot. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier. But I think my psychiatry battle cry is always like, no shame, no stigma. Because I think as a psychiatrist, we're constantly working against shame and stigma that's associated with mental illness. And so it's just something that if you follow me on Instagram or read it, whatever I write, it's that there's always a big theme of really working on eradicating the shame and stigma that's associated with mental illness. So
awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Thank
you need to so you kind of glossed over a few things. I know you're just a humble woman. I get it.
Oh gosh.
But you did not accentuate. Yes, we talked about the podcast, which, by the way, I'm just going to flash across the screen one more time, which is More Happiness, Less Suffering podcast. So be sure, Fearless Freedom Tribe, to check this out. And then you did not highlight self, did you? Did you highlight that?
Oh, no.
You didn't even talk about it. I just wrote a book.
Oh, you're so sweet. I think I have it here. I got it. So this is Salve, Words for the Journey. So this is actually a book of poetry that I wrote. I think I published it a little over a year ago. And this was probably an example of one effort to be fearless, I would say, because I think writing poetry and putting it out into the world definitely required a degree of vulnerability that was maybe a little bit new for me, especially as a psychiatrist, where we're kind of supposed to be these like blank slate, types. Or that's a bit outdated, but many of us still do that to some extent. And so, it was really I think a real process for me to kind of step into who I wanted to be and how I wanted to express myself. And, that's really what I started on Instagram, was just writing poetry and sharing poetry. And eventually I was kind of like, I think I have enough to put it in a book, and so I kind of compiled it, and I worked with an editor, and we got it out into the world. And I was really excited to come across this nonprofit publishing house called Pager Publications that actually supports the work of physician writers. So they're a nonprofit, but they're entirely run by physicians. So, physician editors and physician, the person who designed the cover and all of that. And so I thought it was just a really beautiful mission that they had. And so, it's been a really wonderful process, and hopefully there'll be a volume 2 at some point,
nice.
In the future. Yeah, whenever the time is right. So, but thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and reminding me to talk about it.
And then last but not least, where can they reach you, or how can they reach you on social? Is IG the best place, or?
Yeah, IG is probably the best place. I'm at Monisha Vasa, so just my name. And that's also my website, monishavasa.com. And that's my Facebook, Twitter, everything. I'm not as active on Facebook and Twitter as I am on Instagram. But that's a good way to reach me. And I'm, always happy to be in touch if, anybody has questions or wants to connect about, creativity, mental health. Oh, I think I did. What was that last thing you said, Charmaine?
No, I didn't say anything. You're all good.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So if anybody wants to connect with me, like I said, about creativity, mental health, mindfulness, resilience, these are all things I love to always connect with people about. So please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to connect.
Awesome. Yay!
Thank you so much, Charmaine. And I'm so glad we finally did this. And I'm so glad we're actually going to have you on our podcast in a few weeks. I'm so excited about that. So thank you so much, like I said, for all that you do and share. And like I said, you're just such a light. And I feel it all the way out here on the West Coast.
Awesome. Thank you for all that you do. And thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.